Okay, the Mishnah had said, first of all, a good kvittel from Yerushalayim. Right? Everyone's tefillah should be answered, and everyone should be zeicha to a simchas yontif, and Baruch Hashem, the share goes on. Okay, the Mishnah had said that various people who do the avodah, the avodah would be puzzle. So we had a zor passel the avodah, we had an oinen passel the avodah, we had a tefillah passel the avodah, we had mechusa gipurim, and now we're mechusa begodim. If the kohen is lacking begodim, if the kohen gadol is not missing, it's missing one of 8. If the kohen hedjid is missing one of 4, then the avodah they do is puzzle. So the Gemara is looking for the source. So 11 lines up on Yud Zayin Amid Beis. Says Mechusa Kippurim begodim minalan. So Amar Abavo, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Umataba Meshem to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. They brought it down from the Tana Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Damakra. The pasuk says, "V'chagarta oisam avneit," and they should gird. You should gird them with a girdle, with a belt. Aroin ubanov, v'chavashto lahem migbois, and put on their hats. V'haisa lahem kuhuna lechukas oilam, and that will be for them a kuna lechukas oilam. Why do we darshan? Bisman shebigdeyim aleihem, when the begodim upon them, then kunasim aleihem. Right? Ein begudeyim aleihem, ein kunasim aleihem. So you see that as a result of putting on the begodim, that creates the kunim. And mela, if you're missing the begodim, right? So therefore, what you're not a kohen. So if you're not a kohen, so it's like obviously you can't do the avodah. So mechusa begodim would be chesarin mad in the kuna mashma. Fred the Gemara kasha. You learn it from the pasuk. V'hoisa lehem kahuna l'chukas olam. I have another pasuk. The Tanya. Minayin l'shtuya yayin. How know a kohen that drinks wine? Shem avad chilul. If he does the avodah, it's mischalul. Tamad loymar. The pasuk says yayin v'shecher al teisht. You should not drink yayin v'shecher al teisht. Ata uvanecha itcha b'voyachem al moyed. Musu. Chukas olam darasechem. So it's important. The end of the pasuk speaks about death. If you go in when you are drunk, or you yayin, even if you're not drunk, just a certain amount of wine, you would go ahead and would passel. And that's in Vayikru Yud Tes. In the next pasuk, it says, "V'havdol ben hakodesh ben hachoil ben hatame ben hatar." So what does it mean ben hachoil? That if you go ahead and you shika when you do the avodah, it makes the avodah choil. So that right now that's not a kasher at all, because again we wanted the halacha of mechusa begodim. Here's the kasha. The brisa continues. Mechusa begodim ushaloi rochatz yadayim raglayim minayin. How do you know mechusa begodim? And if the kohen did not wash his hands from the kiyars, Rashi had said, how do you know it's puzzle? How do you know? Talmud Laimar, we have a gzera shava. We learn out chuka gzera shava. Rashi tells us, let's see Rashi the gzera shava. B'shtuya yayin ksiv chukas oilam, u'mechusa begodim ksiv kuhuna l'chukas oilam. So we already established that the shtuya yayin, if he does the avodah, that it's mechalal, and it says chuka. It says chuka by mechusa begodim. It says mechusa. It says by that if someone who doesn't wash his hands, they have to wash their hands. It says chuka. So memela, the source now is shtuya yayin, not the hoisa, not a pasuk. It's gzera shava. So Fred the Gemara, right? It says, how could you tell me the source is v'hoisa lahem l'kunas oilam? And that's from there. I see it's gzera shava chuka. That's the Gemara's kasha. And for the Gemara, ime hasam, if you only have the pasuk, right? The pasuk if you only have the pasuk of shtuya yayin, the only pasuk of shtuya yayin, the gzera shava, havamina, hani mili. When would you be mechusa begodim? When would you be mechal the avodah? That's avodah the zor chayav alav misa. It's a avodah that is zor that's chayav misa. So we'll see what that is in a second. Aval avodah the ein zor chayav misa, and avodah that is zor is not chayav misa ein maloi kamash malon the pasuk v'hoisalem chukasayla. Okay, so we have the Gemara's kasha. We have the pasuk v'hoisa lehem kuna chukasaylam, and we have gzera shava. The gzera shava was shtuya yayin. In shtuya yayin, what did we see? In shtuya yayin, we saw that if you're going to drink wine and you do the avodah, you're going to be mechayiv misa b'dei shemayim. So obviously, the avodah under discussion is an avodah that would mechayiv misa b'dei shemayim, right? So if I only had shtuya yayin, I would say that's mechalal. Let's say it's an avodah that if a zor does, he's not chayiv misa. Then perhaps it's avodah. It's not mischalel. Kemashma lon b'hoisa lehem kahunas oil b'hoisa alei lehem kahuna l'chukas oilam. That even if it's an avodah that a zor is not mechayiv misa, it will be mechal the avodah. Okay, so that's the teretz. Now, what does it mean the zor chayiv misa? That it has to be. I mentioned before. It didn't catch him. That it has to be an avodah tama. It has to be the final avodah. So we have a list of four. Rashi brings a list. One is Zrika, it's the final avodah of the dam. Haktara, burning. Nisach hayayin, and nisach hamayin. If you go ahead and you do a libation by pouring that down, that's going to be the final avodah. So if you look at Rashi, Ime hasam mishtei yayin havamina hani mili demitli avoida b'mechusa begodim be'avoida shesar chayv alamisa kidichsiv bahu kra b'vayachem el moyev loisamusu. By shtei yayin, it says that don't come into the el moed with the avoida that'll kill you. Ba'avoida sheish b'misa the psul makosam daber be'enu ela arba avoidis srika aktar nisach hamayin va'yayin. What do these all have in common, fellas? These are all avoida tama. They're the final avoida. So it's kachim. It's basic law in kachim. Kachim 101. That it's only avoida that is chaymisa is avoida tama. So geshmak. So again, Fred Gemara kasha mechusa bigodim. You know from what? From Chayislan Chukasaylam. Fred Gemara I chuka says more chuka from shtei yayin and only be an avoida that chayv misa, as it says in the pasuk that don't come in shtei yayin and tamas and die. Mashen kain I'd say avoida that azor is not chayv misa. It's not an avoida tama. It's not a complete avoida. I would say if you do the avoida, then maybe it's not maschalo. Kemashmul on the pasuk for Chayislan. So very geshmak. So we have two sources, and you need both. Ashkim mechusa begodim shtei yayin minalon. So we know by mechusa begodim and avoida that what, even if it's not, how do you know shtei yayin? In other words, if you look at shtei yayin, it's clearly speaking about an avoida that what that is chayiv misa on. How do you know that avoid? How do you know that if a kohen is drinking wine and he comes in and he does an avoida, that's not an avoida tama? Maybe it's not maschal the avoida. Right? Of course, the pasuk shtei yayin speaking about an avodah that chayiv misa on. So how do you know shtei yayin that even it's an avodah that chayiv misa on? How do you know what it would be possible? That's what the Gemara wants to know. So ask chuka min mechusa begodim. You can learn it out from mechusa from mechusa begodim. Just like mechusa begodim, it says chuka, and it's including both avodas, whether it's what an avodah that is mechuyev misa or not mechuyev misa. Who adin shtei yayin. It will, whether the avoida is an avoida that's mechayiv misa or not mechayiv misa. Also by shtei yayin, it would be meschal the avoida. Fred the Gemara v'hatana ulahavdil ben kodesh l'chol kanasav la. We saw on the Amid Aleph. It said ulahavdil ben kodesh ben achol. Right, and that was speaking, guys, about mechusa begodim. It wasn't speaking about shtei yayin. So it was speaking about shtei yayin. Excuse me. Let's see it again. It says the Gemara, "What the Tana ulahavdil ben kodesh uben achoel kanasav la." He learned shtei yayin that's puzzled for the avodah because it says ulahavdil ben kodesh ben achoel. So how can you tell me now that he's learning it what from chuka? Right. Again, you're switching gears. What are you telling me? You're telling me that you're learning out shtei yayin from what? From mechusa begodim. But that's not the source. The source we gave on the Amid Aleph was l'havdil ben choil, meaning if you go ahead and do the avodah, it'll be mischal the avodah, but not the gezeres shava. And for the Gemara, mekame delekim gezeres shava. That teretz l'havdil ben kodesh ben achoil is before you had the gezeres shava. Once you had the gezeres shava, that pasuk is no longer necessary. That's no longer necessary because once I know mechusa begodim is both whether it's an avodah that's misa or not yechayev, and it says chuka, who adin shtei yayin, not only misa that it says openly yechayev, but even about an avodah that you would not be chayev, avodah that you wouldn't be chayev misa as gezeres shava from mechusa begodim, you would be chayev. For the Gemara for Tana mechusa begodim hu de koyalef. You're learning at shtei yayin from mechusa begodim. We learned it the opposite way. We learned that what? We learned it from mechusa begodim. Look at Rashi. V'hatana first medium word line. V'hatana nakde legezeres shava mechusa begodim hu the yalef ba mishtui yayin v'lei shavke leorchei. In other words, you're saying the opposite. We learned that mechusa begodim from shtui yayin, not vice versa. And now you're telling me the opposite way. Now you're telling me what? The opposite way. Says the Gemara, here's what it means. How do you know there's no difference? It's not like you thought you're learning out once you know this din, so in Mela you're going to say the din applies to all. It applies to Mechusa Begodim, it applies to Shtei Yayin, and it applies to Rachatz Yadayim Raglayim. There's no difference between any of them. Okay, so now we have two sources in our quest. Mechusa Begodim, whether it's an Avoida, that it's Chayav Misa, that we learn from Chuka. Whether it's an Avoida, not Mechayav Misa, that's we learn from Hoysebem Kunas Alechem. And we learn out Shtei Yayin, that's Mechuyev. Even if it's not mechuyev, we learn it from mechusa begodim, and we learn now if you go ahead and he fails to wash his hands as well from chukah, that the kohen would be mechayev misa, and the avodah would be mischalo, Fred the Gemara, you're still telling me this is where you're learning it from, right? You still says the Gemara, if that's the case, elo lahavdol lamali. Now that you told me once, initially we had lahavdol ben a kodesh and lechol, right? Initially we had that as the source from being mechalul the avodah. Now you're telling me it's Gzeir Shabbos, so what do you do with that pasuk? Like once you change to Gzeir Shabbos, what do you do with that pasuk? Rav, we need for Rav's din. The Rav Rav would not go ahead and have an amoira, meaning someone to go ahead. Even he wouldn't paskin. He wouldn't paskin once he drank. So that's what you use, lahavdol, and to go ahead and to be mavdol, that you should not go ahead and drink something in order to psak. Let's see Rashi. He wouldn't pass until the next day. So go back to the Amid Aleph, Yehuda. Go back to the Amid Aleph. At the bottom line, we're going to learn from the what it says. Before you go ahead and give a psak that's going to be mavdol, that's going to make paskin between mavdol b'kodesh l'chol, make sure you didn't drink wine. So that's what we learn from that pasuk, right? That's the connection between being mavdol b'kodesh l'chol that Rav didn't drink. That's what I need it for. So back in the Gemara. Hakati michach and afka. You're still saying you learn it out from the Hoysa, right? The pasuk on the Amid Aleph. Mechasam nafka. I have another pasuk. It says v'naslu b'nei Aaron hakayin. And when it asks me out kayin be kihunoi, right? It says the pasuk says v'nosem bnei Aaron kayin eishal mizbeach, and bnei Aaron the kayin u'pedation mizbeach v'orchu eitzim ala eish, and he's going to put eitzim on the eish. Now it says v'nosem bnei Aaron hakayin be kihunoi limen al kayin gadol shalavash bigdei kayin hedyet v'avad avadasai psula. So that's mechusa begodim. Again, he has 8. It teaches me that what? It has to be B'kahuna. The Kohen Gadol has to be B'kahuna. He has to have all 8 Begodim. So you have a raya that what? Mechusa Begodim is what? It's no good. Says the word Ime Hasam. If you learn that from the pasuk on the Amid Aleph, right? If it Nasan Aaron, again, who to be careful. It doesn't mean if the pasuk Orchu that we just brought. It means if the pasuk, we just have the pasuk of Hoysa Lahem Kahuna Lechukas Oilam. If you just have that pasuk, Havamina Hani Mili, Avoida de Ma'akva Kapara. I would say an avoida that stops the kapara from taking place is mischalo. I'll avoida the loy ma'akav kapara loy, but an avoida that's not ma'akav the kapara, I would say it's not mischalo. Kemash malon that if it does the avoida mechusa bigadim, it is mischalo, despite the fact that what? That it's not ma'akiv. In other words, we had one limud for what if the zar is not mechayiv misa, or that it's mischalo. We had another one for what avoida that it's not mischalo. Now, why would I think that way? Says Rashi, mechasam afka kati krachmin ksiv ulmai yitzrich hakayin hacha gabe v'nasnu b'nei Aaron hakayin eish lashmina mechasam begadim. That he has to be b'kuhunoi. So next Rashi, if you only learn the pasuk on the Amid Beis, maybe haisam lehem lekuna like chukas olam, having makminan lay, I would say tzedayin, hahi, ba'avoida hamakeves kapara. I would say, when is mischalo only an avoida that if you don't do it, that the kapara doesn't work. It doesn't work. Aval nesinas eish shel hedyet. What's that pasuk speaking about? The pasuk speaking about putting the eish. Now, if a hedyet would put the eish, it's a mitzvah to put the eish. But if you don't, the eish would come down from Shemayim. So that pasuk would tell me what? Only what? An avoida, even an avoida that you're not chayiv. Okay, look at me. Look at. You're not looking at me. Look at me. Right. I have this case over here, right? I have a hoysel lahem. That's zicha. That's speaking about when he's wearing the begodim. Azay. Now you have the pasuk for orchu that Aaron has to put the fire on. That fire is a mitzvah, but it's not an avodah that would passel. No, I would think if you just had that pasuk and not the other pasuk, I would say an avodah, the other pasuk, an avodah that's ma'akiv. If you don't do it, that's mischalo. What about an avodah that's not ma'akiv, like putting the eish? Kamashmon, the second pasuk of Orchu Yehuda, that even an avodah that is just putting the eish on also would be mischalo. So in other words, I need the chuka to tell me what that the shtuya yayin to tell to me even if you're not chayiv misa. I need the pasuk of Hoysa if you're not chayiv misa, because shtuya yayin would only tell me you're chayiv misa. So that's mischalo. But right about it's not mechayiv misa. So that's what Vinasna tells me. In addition, I would say from Vinasna only an avodah that what is ma'akiv. Mashman can avoid the not. So kamashman ba'orchu hakoyen, even if it's just putting the eish, which is not ma'akiv, it would be mischal geshmak. Okay. So weiter. So you learn it out from Orchu b'nei Aaron HaKoyin esan esachim HaKahan b'kuna v'kan l'koyin hedyet shalom esbig de koyin v'av im hasam havamina hanimil chiser. Okay, so now we have another pasuk. In other words, we have Nas b'nei Aaron HaKoyin, and now we have a pasuk for Orchu b'nei Aaron HaKoyin esan esachim. And the one before you were putting on the fire, over here you're putting on what? You're putting on the pieces. And what does that teach me? That the koyin hedyet that is wearing he's supposed to be wearing 4. He's wearing 8. He's overdressed, right? I would say vavar v'asa psula. So l'chayr you see whether it's more, it's even if a kohen hedyet wears more, it still passes. So yimi hasam havamina hani milichisar aval yisreloi. No, it's I only had the first pasuk of the Amid Beis v'haisa. I would say it's only if you're mechusa begadim. How do you know if you're increasing the begadim? You're a kohen hedyin, you're wearing kohen gadol. Kemash malon, the pasuk of Orchu to teach me that what, even if you add. So we have 3 limudim, right? We have 3 limudim. One for misa, that even if it's not mechayiv misa, even if it's not ma'akiv, even if it's not ma'akiv the kapara, and even if what, if it's more begadim. So I need 3 psukim. I need the v'hoisa to counteract those 3 psukim. Further discussion of the Big Day Kahuna. This is going to take us the rest of the daf, basically the rest of the daf. Hanarabanan, Mirushalim. It's too long. It's supposed to be kimi dasai. It's supposed to fit exactly. The length should be the length of the kohen's body, and this is over. Misulakim, if it's a little short. Mishuchakim, if it's old. For Avid, and he does Avidasa, he does the avodah with these begadim, then kshera, it's going to be what? It's going to be kasha. It's going to be kasha. Lavash shnei michnasayim, if he wears 2 pairs of pants, shnei avatim or 2 belts, chaser echad, or let's say he just wears 3 of the 4 begadim, yeser, right? Achas, or 1 extra, or shahoisalei retia al makas b'saro. He has some kind of bandage on a makas, so it's going to be a chatzitza between his skin and the big day kahuna, right? Or shahoyu on the base, or shahoyu mitutashtin where it's dirty, shmutzdik, or mikuran where it's ripped. For avid avidasei psula, his avodah would be psula. So the first halacha. The first halacha, this is what we need, is the first halacha Yehuda. Mirushalim, Misulakim, and those 2, the Brisa, Atana says is kasha. So if it's too long or too short, and he does the avodah is kasha. However, if it's dirty, if it's missing something, ripped, or right, then what? Then not. Rav Yehuda Mishmuel says Yehuda name is Shmuel. Mirushalim ksherin, that's the same as the brisa. Misulakim psulin. But if it's too short, it's puzzle. Too short, it's puzzle. 1 second. We had a brisa that said it's what? It's kasha. Fred the Gemara, Tanya, Misulakim ksherin. If it's too short, it's kasha. So how can you tell me if it's too short, what? It's puzzle. I says it's kasha. So Amar Rami Bar Chama says Rami Bar Chama like kasha. It's not a problem. Kan she silkon al yedei avneit. Kan the lesnu meikara. In other words, cloud. There's two ways that your pants could be short. Your pants can be short is because they don't have enough material and they're short, or the pants can be short because you hitched them up too high. In other words, if you folded the material and the avnate's covering it up, and it's being held up. Okay, so in a case where it's shortened, but in other words, it's the right length, or it could be the right length, but you shortened it because you hitched it up, then that's what the Bryce is speaking about. When did Shmuel say is din that it's short? It's short. The guy is a 34-inch seam, and it's a 30. There's no way you can go ahead and make up that difference. That's when it's puzzle. So Shmuel said is din when it's innately puzzle meikara. When is it kasha? When you could have the right midah, but you hitched it up too high. That's the teretz of Rami Bar Chama. Rav Omar, Rav says echad zeh. Now it's not going on misulakim with the avnate. It's going on mirushalim. He says both echad zeh, whether it's mirushalim, the echad zeh, whether it's misulakim, it's puzzle. So Rav appears to go ahead and being arguing on two din in the Mishnah, the din of mirushalim and the din of misulakim, because he says they're both no good. Okay, Rav Huna ikla le'argiza, he came to this place. And Ramalei Baruch Basicha, the son of his in, right? Yes, Makasha. The great Rav Huna, he took advantage of it. That's yes, Makasha. Miyom Hashmuel Mirushalim Ksherim, Umusulakim Psulim, Vatanya Musulakim Ksherim. Amalei Barmina, that's not a Kasha. Barmina Dahi, the Shanya Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama already answered that. Right. When's it puzzle? That's when what? It's short, and then you don't have enough material. When's the Bryce to say it's Kasha? When you have enough material, you just hitched it up with the Avnate. El Rav Kasha, because Rav said that Mirushalim is puzzle. Rav said Mirushalim is puzzle, and here the Brisa said Mirushalim is kasha. So Rav is shver. Says Mechitema Ma Mirushalim. What does Mirushalim mean? Misulakim al yedei avneit. That means the what? That it's really long, and you picked it up. The avneit megas guy is right, and the avneit is considered like you cut it off, and therefore it's not considered long anymore. So in other words, Rav that when Rav said it's Mirushalim is, what does Mirushalim mean? Mirushalim means that you Mirushalim means you picked it up. The Brisa, when the Brisa said Mirushalim is kasha, it's speaking where you picked it up ayidei the avneit, and we'll view what he picked up as cut off, and now it has a perfect fit. Now it's a perfect fit. So it's not the problem. Mirushalim Yehuda is that it's considered like an extra beged, since it's on the ground. Now what's wrong with it? It's not his size. It's considered like an extra beged. You have that extra area. So we have to view that extra area if it's cut off. So we view it as cut off, then it would be kasha. So when it says the Brisa says Mirushalim is kasha, is speaking in a different mitzias than Rav. It's speaking where it's hitched up, and therefore it's no longer. And we'll view that whatever is hitched up as cut off, and therefore that's the case of the Brisa that's Mirushalim that the Brisa says, and Misula so okay. So let's see it again. So say Rav Kasha Mirushalim. Rav Kasha Mirushalim. Ella Misulakim Shekshera Brisa Kasha. The Ayensa Mirushalim. The Brisa is speaking where you hitched it up, and Rav is speaking where you let it down. Ella Misulakim Kasha. Misulakim would be shver. Let's see Rashi. El Misulakim Kasha. The Tonik Sherim. The Brisa says it's Kasha. The Stam Misulakim Gavoyim in a Karka. And Stam Misulakim means it's higher than the ground. Lemaila Miraglav, higher than his feet. Mashma. Rav and Rav cannot say it's speaking where you hitched it up. Kidit tarts Shmuel, like Shmuel gave the teretz. The Alkorchach l'Rav, the Shonis, the Siluk Avnei Megas Gayas, the Hashtavi Kuluk Kitsar Meikara. Because Alkorchach Rav, he asked the answer, Mirushal, he asked the answer that he holds of where you went ahead and you masalik it and cut it off. The shani, the siluk avne megas gayas v'hashta havikula kiktsaru meikara. So this, if it's hitched up, stamazay is mashma. It was totally short. So how can you say that it's, Rav to Rav give that teretz now would not make a lot of sense. So we have a kasha Rav misulakim, right? So Rav Zera, Rav Chodutani, Rav learned one thing. Mirushalim shesilkan al yedei avnei kasherin. So now I have two things. Listen to this. Listen to this, Yuda. I hitched it up, but it's still dragging on the ground. I hitched it up, but it's still dragging on the ground. That's Rav says no good. I hitched it up and it's the right size, then it's good. So when Rav says, right, he says misulakim is puzzle, it's what's it speaking about? Where you hitched it up and it's not the right size. When you hitched it up, it's not the right size. Let's see Rashi. Rav Chadutani. Lahanach mirushalim misulakim, the Brisa, b'chadim milsa. He learned this din mirushalim misulakim in one case. Tani lahu. Mirushalim shesilak rishulin al yedei avneit. If he lifted up until his right size, ksherin. Ava misulakim yosim idai. If he hitched it up too much, psulin. Afilu al yedei avneit. Even al yedei avneit. So therefore, the brisa that learned ksherin is speaking that it's the right size and you cut it off, and therefore it's considered cut off. According to Rav, when's it puzzle? Is you hitch it up too high. It could be the right size. It doesn't make a difference. It's going to be puzzle, right? And Mirushalim, if you hit the right size, then it's going to be kasha. Gemara is now going to jest from a case of tzitzis. If you have a beged, right? If you have a beged that is 4 corners, is chayiv and tzitzis. If you have a beged that's 3 corners, it's not. A beged at 5 is going to be a machlokes. And this is predicated upon, do you view 5 as a 4 or do you view 5 as a 5? In order to view 5 as a 4, I have to view it as not being there. Then it can be 4. Again, we have a beged of 5, but you cut a diagonal. Let's say you cut your tzitz at a diagonal. So now you have 2 corners, right? So if you say it's kosher, you put it tzitz on one of the corners. Good. So says the Gemara now. We're going to suggest. Rav Yomi midifti mirushalim shaloi silkan tanohi. That mirushalim, if it's too long, that you pick up, you hitch up, and that's a machlokes tanoim whether it works. Now, what's the svara of hitching up? What's the svara of hitching up? I'm going to view it as if it's cut off, as if it's not there. I'm going to view it as if it's not there. I want the size to be the right size. And if you're going to go ahead and tell me that it's not there, so it must still be there. Says the Gemara Tanya. Al arba kinafais ksuscha, on 4 corners of your beged. Arba v'lei shalosh. A 4-corner beged is chayiv and tzitzis, and not a 3-corner beged. Ayena ella arba v'lei chamesh. Only 4 and not 5. Kishu oimer asher techase ba, right? Hari balas chamesh amar. When it says asher techase ba, hari balas chamesh is stated. So in other words, that's an extra word, and I would say that's going to include 5. Hamani Makayim Arba v'lei shalosh. So a 4-corner beged is chayiv, not a 3. A 5-corner beged will also be chayiv. Umar royes the rabbis balas chamesh to be chayiv, lohitzi balas shalosh. So marbani balas chamesh, I'll include a balas chamesh yesh b'chal chamesh arba. Why? Because with 4, 5, if you have 5, you have 4. Because you have 3, you don't have 4. So again, I have a brisa that says the ashet chasaba is going to include a beged of 5. It's mechuyev. And now we're going to have a brisa that says it's not. Okay. The Tanya Yidach al arba kanafas kususcha arba v'lei shalosh arba v'lei chamesh. So the difference between the first brisa and the second is whether a 5-cornered beged is mechuyev in tzitzis or not. According to the first one, yes. According to the second one, not. So the second one is not darshning asher techasaba. My lab v'hokamifli the masavar yeser, if it's more kiman the isadami, right. Umasavar kiman the lesadami. Rashi masavar man de potter balas chamesh savar lo yarminan yeser kiman the lesadami. We don't say like it's not there. El kiman isahu. So in other words, if I have a 5-cornered beged, I can view it one of 2 ways. I can view it if it's mechuyev, that it's a 4-cornered beged, or I can view it if it's not mechuyev, it's a 5-cornered beged. If I view it not being there, It's a four-cornered beged. If I view it being there, then what it is it's a four-cornered beged. That's the thing. So the same thing over here. How are you going to view? How are you going to view the Yerushalayim? Let's continue Rashi. El Kamanda Isyahu. V'loy Karina Bei Arba. I'll view it as a 5, and I won't view it as if it's a 4. Umanda Mechayev, and the one that says Yechayev, Svirale, yes, sir, if it's 5, Kamanda Lesa Dami. It's like it's 4. Lahai Chamishi. V'gabe Yerushalayim Nami. Lahave Yitor Begodim. And that will say it's not an extra beged. Again, Yerushalayim. Do I view it as there or not? So, Yehuda, like this. I think Yehuda, I hate to do this to you, but I think we need a little eye contact again. How do you view it? I have over here, I have it sits. I have two opinions. A 5 is good, and a 5 is not good. The 5 that's good is because I'll view it as a 4. And why will I view it as a 4? Because I'll view that extra material as if it's not there. Yes? I'll view the 5 as if it is there. So Memela, that would be the machloikis by Yerushalayim. I have extra material. Do I view it as being there and it's puzzle, or do I view it not being there? So let's suggest the machloikis by tzitzis would be the same machloikis by Yerushalayim. Right? That shmak. That would be the same machloikis. Okay. So the Gemara says, "Loy, I'm not locked into saying that. I have a different explanation. The kuliyami command is yidami. Everyone can hold that what it's there, and if you're holding it's there, it's going to be puzzle. If you're holding it's there, it's 5. Again, you only chayiv a 4-cornered beged. A reason a 5-cornered beged is chayiv is because we consider it a 4-cornered beged, right? Good. So now, we'll say the kuliyama the isyidami. So what's the svara of the Manda Amma who says that it's kasha? Right? V'shayni hacha the Rabbi Rachmana shet chasaba be gzeres kasav. No, einachinami. Linear Yerushalayim, I could say it's puzzle. The reason over here it's going to be kasha because I have a pasuk. It says asher techasaba, and since you have a pasuk, I say asher techasaba. Therefore, I'll view it as kasha. Therefore, I'll view it as kasha since I have I have a pasuk. Good. That's what the Gemara says. The idach, the Tana who does not darshan this riboy, because he says a bal chamesh is pata from tzitzis. Hayita zeh shel asher techasaba my ovidlei. What does he do asher techasaba? Right? What does he do with that? He holds 5 is pata from tzitzis. So the Gemara is asking a kasha now. So now the Gemara is like we went off the connection to Yerushalayim, and now we're analyzing the brisa of tzitzis. But the brisa tzitzis asher techasaba is 5. So I'll consider it covered, and it'll be kafur. Like the Madiyom, it's not good. What does he do with this pasuk? Says the Gemara, the Chidetanya. He needs to my oven like Chidetanya. Urisa Maisai. It says by tzitzis Urisa Maisai. Prat l'ksuslaila, pajamas. There's not mechuyev in tzitzis because you don't see a person in the pajamas. Ayena ela prat l'ksusuma. Maybe a ksusuma, a blind person who can't see his garments. Kishuaymer, where it says asher techasaba. Right? Susuma, that includes the susuma. So that's what he does with it. And what he does with the pasuk? That a blind person is mechuyev in tzitzis. His clothing with 4 corners is mechuyev in tzitzis. Emar, ha'mani mekayim urisem aisai, prat l'ksus laila. Umaroya l'rabis ksus suma l'haisis ksus laila. Why would the clothing of a suma be chayiv in tzitzis, but the pajamas not? Marbani ksusuma she'ishona beria eitzel acherim. Good, he can't see it, but others can. Well, might say pajamas no one sees. So if I want to include something more re'isem I say, it's more sfaridic to say the re'isem I say of a suma than it is one of pajamas. So the one who says achshet chasaba that a 5 is considered a 4, great. The one who says a 5 is considered a 5, he uses it to teach me what? Ksus laila is pata. And right, that's what he uses it for. And the ksus of a suma is chayiv. Good. Says the Gemara, the idach, the Tana who uses the pasuk of asher techasaba for the 5 that is a 4. How does he know about the suma and the pajamas? Nafglei from asher, from the word asher. The idach, the one who uses it from asher techasaba to teach me. Why does he learn from Asher? Why does he need the whole pasuk? Asher goes Asher like Darish. He doesn't dashin Asher. So concluding, basically we had a sugya of Mechusa Begadim. We had a few sources for it. We had a pasuk for Harshel Chukas Olam. We had three other sources for it. They each one was come to a different thing, whether it was avoida that was Lachai Miso, avoida that's Ma'akiv, or avoida that's avoida that is avoida that's Ma'akiv, and the other one extra begadim, extra begadim, not just mechusa, but extra begadim. And now we're having a sugya of too long. We have a brisa that says it's too long. Rav learned the brisa that's speaking where too long meant it was really that you hitched it up to the right size. And right size, then it's kasha. But that's what the brisa is speaking about. But in Achinami, if it's not the right size, it would be puzzle. And we wanted to say that hitching up, whether it's the right size or not, whether it's considered, if it's there or not, is totally in a machloikis by what? By tzitzis. And we said, no, we had another way to explain the machloikis by tzitzis, nothing to do with yitor, but everything to do with right, how you darshan a pasuk. Thank you for listening, Yehuda, and anyone else who sees it. Good night.